I feel privileged to have grown up in the 1980s, which in my opinion has probably the best cartoons ever made. Shows such as He-Man, Thundercats, Jason the World Warriors are all great examples of decade-defining animation works. But for those about to ask, my favourites were Ulysses 31 and The Mysterious Cities of Gold. The problem we face these days is that sometimes memories from our childhoods can be ruined by shoddy reboots or updates which do little to improve or expand on the original themes. Transformers Beast Wars was a reboot to one of the most loved 80s cartoons, which I was obviously referring to as Transformers. The series divided fans of the original Transformers, and I totally agree that it's a love or hate show. For me personally, I hated it, which is why even when I heard that Takara were releasing this game based on it, I had little interest. This was fortunate, as the game was to become a North American and Japanese exclusive. In the case of the Western release, it would be a Blockbuster exclusive, so I knew that I'd never get to play it unless I imported it. Thankfully, I wasn't missing much, as like another Blockbuster exclusive, Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut, Transformers Beast Wars Transmetals is a shoddy mess of a game and one which the studio should be ashamed of. On paper, the game could and should have been awesome. Huge robots which have 3 different forms to battle as, a decent number of characters to play as, mini-games, and heck, who wouldn't enjoy wanting to smash your friends around in multiplayer mode? Sadly, the game has gone down in history as being so bad it's barely above Superman 64 level, which is saying a great deal. To begin with, I'll bring you up to speed on the storyline because surprisingly the game actually does have one. The Beast Wars have raged on, and at the end Optimus Primal, no that wasn't a speech impediment, is captured. He manages to send a message back in time to himself, which he hopes will allow the team to win the Beast Wars. The gameplay is about as deep as the storyline, and as you can see, this is a 3D fighter, but nothing can prepare you for how badly this plays. To boot things off, the camera is abysmal. It frequently gets stuck in endless rotating loops, which means it's impossible to lock onto your opponent and attack. The fighting mechanics are non-existent. This is a button masher of the simplest form, and even having 3 different modes to play as doesn't help. To start with, you have the robot mode, which is your standard attack form. You have a basic arsenal of either long range attacks, whilst a couple to use when you get close to your opponent. Because of how limited the mechanics are, you'll rarely need to defend yourself, as attacking is definitely the best option. Secondly, you have the beast mode, and this is the animal robot form. Each of the animals has their own unique attacks, which pretty much complement their real life counterparts. Personally, beast mode is the only way to really play the game, as you have either more powerful attacks or increased speed, which makes things a little bit more tolerable. Finally, you have the vehicle mode, which is absolutely, honestly useless. You'll be able to zip around in the arenas and that's pretty much it. Apart from fitting in with the Transformers theme, there's really no reason to need or use the vehicle form, so its inclusion is completely against the basics of any decent game design. Perhaps even weaker than the gameplay are the graphics, which are frankly abysmal. I've seen more polygons in Starwing on Super Nintendo, and the animation here seems to have less depth than an episode of South Park. The colours all look blurry and textures lack any depth, and the backgrounds could have been drawn on Microsoft Paint. I can't see why they're so poor, as the PlayStation version of the game is a lot better. There is also absolutely no size difference between the characters, so regardless of which character you choose, they all appear to be equal in size, which again is also a major difference from the PlayStation version. The transformation effects are just about recognisable, although they do look like they're having seizures rather than epic transformations, but it's at least passable. With so little of the cart clearly being used for graphics or gameplay depth, then you'd be fooled if you thought the game packed an awesome soundtrack to make up for it. To its credit, there is a little voice acting, but this doesn't include the cutscenes between levels. You're instead left with the talents of the mainframe team to deliver the game's limited speech, or in some cases very good impersonators. The music in the game is very Japanese in style, which I normally like, but I found this to be repetitive and bland. It's totally uninspired. Very much like my voice, it's not for everyone's taste. There is one area where the game actually takes some initiative to expand on its gameplay, and that's with, yep, you guessed it, everyone's favourite gameplay style, mini-games. Firstly, you have the 2 race types. These give you the option of picking your bot and racing to the finish line over 2 different distances. This is utter garbage. The controls are unresponsive and there seems to be little point to playing them. Secondly, you have the sunrise and sunset showdowns. Again, these are essentially the same thing, as you pick the bot and wait for a signal to shoot your opponent. The only difference is the time of day they are taking place, and also one option requires you to pull down on the analog stick before shooting. They are also awful, and after a couple of times you'll never want to go back. Wrapping up the minigame snooze fest is the Discontent Mode. This is a battle with an opponent whereby you have to collect falling discs to rack up the biggest amount of points possible whilst attacking or defending yourself. This is slightly more enjoyable than the main game, which is still not saying much at all. The sad thing is that despite the game being awful, it's actually a very sought after game amongst collectors. Very much like Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut, which is another Blockbuster exclusive, they are hard to come by, especially complete in box, and so it demands a high price when it becomes available. But my advice is this one is only really for collectors only. It's a game so poor that finding any redeeming qualities in it is hard, and when fans of the cartoon even slate it, you know there's very little for the rest of us. But if you beg to differ, then let me know in the comments down below. Perhaps you were a young gamer when you first played this and could look past the limited gameplay and actually had a lot of fun with it. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time.